Hello friends and welcome to Figure Study, where I've been trying very hard to keep my cool, but there has been a ceaseless parade of airplanes flying right over our building for the past several hours. Anyway, I'm going to try to work around all that nonsense as best I can, but yes, today we're taking a look at Planet X's Chaos, which is, I think I'm pronouncing that right, but that's their version of Fall of Cybertron Shockwave. Shockwave from Fall of Cybertron is, he's basically just a stick with wings and like a little engine in the back. I feel like this pulls off the look pretty well. It's a Cybertronian vehicle mode, so it looks like kind of a mess, but that is sort of the point. I think for what it's worth, they did a pretty good job of capturing that. I don't remember if we saw Shockwave's alt mode in the game or not. I'm just not sure, but this does look pretty darn close to the, was it Generations figure that they released? I mean, I think it's better, but I would hope so given how much more expensive this is than the Generations figure. But yeah, it's just kind of a stick with wings and this booster thing that you can flare out these panels if you wanted, or if you want, you can bring them in and they make kind of a pseudo cone or cylinder shape for the engine. There's not a lot I can say about this alt mode because it just kind of looks like Shockwave stretching out really far, because that's exactly what it is. I mean, I guess you could also argue that you don't really get much in the way of robot kibble because it's all robot kibble. Now I'm just realizing I did not fully transform him properly, so give me a moment. There isn't a whole lot to this alt mode, but I do appreciate it for what it is. I feel like it looks the part, and it definitely looks like Shockwave's alt mode because of this very telltale shape for what is obviously Shockwave's chest. Also, just that purple makes it very obviously Shockwave. I do think it's cool, though, how they've got multi-tones of purple here. Like, there's the kind of overall purple that they used for the plastic. Then there's this translucent purple that they've used in a few places that I feel like they could have done like a white or silver or something behind these pieces to make that show up a little bit better. But it's there in several key areas, even these bits that were originally covered because I didn't have it transformed properly. And they also have a third purple in this metallic, it's like lighter metallic purple that they've got painted in several spots to just kind of add little accents here and there. So I think that's pretty cool. I like that they used multiple tones of purple. And then, of course, there's the darker kind of gunmetal-y color that works as kind of like extra accents or like a secondary color. I appreciate the transformation that this guy has and making this work in toy form as best it can, given this is just its design. But it's just kind of a okay alt mode, I guess. Pretty decently sized, though. In particular, it's very long. Not like that. And I need to adjust. Hang on. Here we've got Chaos next to the Standard Deluxe Squad, and you can see that this guy is, there's a lot to him. He stretches out quite a bit, let's say. It looks like a ship that's designed to go fast, not necessarily be super sturdy, let's say. And here he is with the duck tank. Okay, ordinarily I would just fast forward through the transformation, but there's a lot of stuff going on with Chaos that I kind of want to talk about, so I am actually going to, let me adjust this, I am actually going to walk through the transformation this time, which is going to be really fun since I'm combating all of these background noises. To start, we're going to come under here, and these two bits here are these separate panels that have a hinge right here. So first, coming around to the underside, there are these two panels here that are, there's like a hinge on either side, that's where they move, and they're tabbed in on this strut here. So I want to pop these out because we need access to that strut. And there you can see the tab and the slot that they peg into. Next, I want to untab these bits from this kind of central cannon looking thing. And there you can kind of see the tab and the slot that goes into. So it'll get that stuff out of the way. You can unpeg this from here. That just pegs in there and lift that up. There's also a peg right around here that pegs into this part, so unpeg that. And then there is a tab up here that pegs in right in here. So there you can kind of see the slot, and there you can see the tab. So we want all of this taken out, and let's put this off to the side and deal with this first. So this will become the big arm cannon. First thing you want to do is fold this down, and this can get a little tricky. So unpeg these purple pipe bits from the sides here, and they peg in quite sturdily, but they will unpeg. They peg in two different spots. You can see there are 2 pegs and 2 peg holes there. Unpeg those, rotate this up, and we're going to flatten all of these. I'll try and keep this on camera. So I want to rotate this section around and kind of get everything flush like that. And you can just pop these bits off. It might even be easier in some instances, but for the sake of just showing you that you don't necessarily need to, I'm just going to leave those on. Bring this up, and this will just kind of settle inside here, just like that. Then this folds up around here, comes around, and pegs, not pegs, but it kind of frictions together like that. So this kind of forms this compacted little thing. And now these purple bits, these can come off for the transformation, but I did want to show that you can leave them on for the transformation as well. But these come off, come back, unpeg and peg back in, but these swing around, and the first peg here kind of settles into this groove here. And kind of see coming from this angle how that settles in there. And this comes down and kind of helps to keep that second peg in place, because there's like a little notch up there that locks it in place. And we will be doing more with this later when we attach it to the robot mode, but for now, this is the big arm cannon thing, all compacted up. And our absurdly awful upstairs neighbors are vacuuming now for the 3rd time today. I'm just gonna push through it. So these will become the legs. These want to kind of straighten out a little bit. These sections here come down. So first there is the, let's call it the Vulcan part of the transformation, where you have to swing this entire assortment of panels and hinges around what will be the upper thigh. And as you can see, that hinge sticks out a lot and will bump into the upper thigh, and that requires some flexing, and that feels terrible. First, you want to unpeg this from here. There's like a little spot in the thigh that this will peg into. And we're just bringing it forward to get it out of the way. And then you want to kind of straighten out this knee joint. So you can see there it is straight, there it is kind of bent for the transformation. There's actually a cut in the joint right here that you can turn. And that, I believe, is intended to make it easier for you to get this hinge past the upper thigh. So you kind of have to twist at that joint in order to bring this around, and you still do have to flex it, and I still hate doing that, but it hasn't broken on me yet. And you twist it back into place. I don't think I see any stress marks in there, but it's hard to tell right now. But yeah, I just don't like doing that. But this comes down, and it will tab in here with this tab here. So this swings down, and there's this peg that'll peg into, there's a slot there, and then that peg will peg into that slot there. So swing that around and peg that in place. Then this will swing around the heel and peg in the same spots on this side. It just kind of sandwiches around that strut section and becomes the calf. Next, we want to pull this section down and then straighten this out and bring it back up. And I believe this purple bit is supposed to tuck back up against the leg, because that gives this the ability to wiggle back and forth to kind of match the tilt in the front there. And that gives you a foot. So from there, you want to rotate this bit around. Okay, another part that I don't particularly like is getting these untabbed, because you do have to pull back a little bit, and I worry that that stresses these pegs in here. Again, I'm not really seeing any stress so far, I don't think, but I just don't like having to flex this out like that, because you can see how that adds a little bit of flex up there, and I just don't like that. But bring that up, and from this side, bring that out a little bit, and I just don't like doing this, but out and then up. Okay, and these also peg in up here, so I want to bring that down just to unpeg those bits. And we'll just bring these out here for now. I'm going to keep these down and out of the way, though, because we've got more stuff to do up here. So I'm going to fan these out a bit so that we can deal with these bits that I did not transform the first time around. These just hinge forward, and you can see that translucent bit, the detail that's revealed when it's back, is actually part of the hinge mechanism, which is kind of neat. So that goes forward and kind of clicks-ish into place in the forward position, like so. With that done, we want to get these bits out of the way so we can do some more stuff. So I want to lift these up. These are part of the forearms, and pull these sections down, which are the shoulders, and these actually tab into place. You can see there's a slot on the top of the shoulder pad here that actually tabs into this piece here, and that keeps it nice and solid. But I'm going to bring that down, and that gets things out of the way so that we can then take this gray piece and rotate that around completely. And this will flip back and kind of tab in back there. With the arms bent here, you want to straighten them out like this. And just make sure those are straight, but keep them down. Because next we've got to take this piece and push this down into here. And by pushing this in, it will lift up the panel that the head's sitting on, like so. And you might need to give it a bit more of a push to make sure that it's up all the way. But once that's pushed in and that sits flush, then this whole assembly here can come down, and that'll kind of tab into place. Then these sections come up and clip over the torso to keep the arms in place. Now for the wings, these can kind of slide back and open to change their shape a little bit, and then they just kind of hinge in and sit at a bit of an angle. Now for the forearms, you want to rotate them around so that these little scoop things are facing up. And this is a thing that I've seen people have trouble with in other videos. It's probably been sorted by now. I did my own kind of short video on this as well, but sometimes people have issue getting the fists out of the forearms here. What I find works is if you move this a little bit so you can get to this door, you pop that open, and basically all you have to do is push the fist from the top out of the bottom. So instead of trying to like pry things up or fold this over and try to pry the fist out, because I've seen people do that too, where they fold this in and then they have trouble getting the fist out. If you have both doors open, you can just push the fist out from the top. That makes it so much easier. But this comes around, and then this will peg in to the bit there and close up the forearm, and then this can close up and also close up the forearm. So again, on this side, just pop that open, push the fist through, bring it down, and close it all up. And then bring the arms, and then bring the arms down, and adjust the shoulder pads so that they are properly up. And there we have Caius in his robot mode, looking very shockwavy. And I almost said that we are done, but we are not actually done. There's one more thing to do, and that is pop up the waist, which gives him a little bit more height and gives him a bit of a tilt. That tilt doesn't really matter much when you've got the weight of that big gun on his arm, but it does give you a tilt. And it just extends the torso a bit, makes him a little bit taller. But there is the kind of basic form of Caius, Fall of Cybertron Shockwave, in his robot mode. And yes, you might be noticing it. I will admit to it. I did do a little bit of customizing on Caius. I actually painted his face, what you would call a face. The face originally is like this metallic-y purple paint, and then the eye is translucent purple plastic, and that is really ridiculous. because if you look on the back of the head, there's nothing back there that would make light piping work. This guy does not have any electronics in him. It's just translucent purple plastic, so that eye does not have any real look to it at all. It just kind of blends into the metallic purple for the faceplate background, whatever you want to call it. So I took it upon myself to very meticulously and very carefully, and it was tough because there's no good way that I found to actually remove the head to make it any easier, so I had to carefully and awkwardly move the entire figure around. But basically, I went in with a paintbrush, a relatively steady hand, and a magnifying glass, and painted matte black in the kind of panel area inside the face, and then went over the eye with yellow. And that looks so much better for me. Oh, actually, one other thing I forgot to do. The head is actually on a stalk. As you can see, you can kind of look up and down a bit, go left and right, but you can pull the head up, and that gets you a much bigger up and down range. You don't really get any tilt. This is just the stalk kind of wiggling back and forth, but yeah, that gives you way more up and down. I know this isn't exactly accurate to the false Cybertron version of Shockwave. I know that he actually did have a purple light for his eye, but I can't look at a Shockwave and not want the face to be, you know, the black void with a yellow dot for an eye. That's Shockwave, and even if it's accurate to the source material, to have it in purple, I feel like this looks better. But there we've got Shockwave Chaos in his robot mode, and he doesn't look quite right, does he? Yeah, that's why we've got this. Now, this can attach on either arm, but for some reason it's very loose on this arm. There's something with this tab is meant to peg into these slots on either forearm, and there's just something with the tolerances on this one that it doesn't want to stay in. So I'm not going to be plugging this onto that arm. I am instead going to be plugging it onto this arm. And to do that, you have to remove the fist. My initial worry was like, I really don't want to do that because then you've got just a fist hanging around. Like you just pop it off, it's just sitting on this peg, and it pops right off. It holds on just fine. This is a little loose, like it still works fine, but like it's not gonna just come off on its own, but I feel like this could have been a little tighter. But anyway, this pops off, and I was kind of like, I don't like having this fist that just sits off to the side. But I realized what you can do is you just open up the forearm panel and put the fist back in there and close it up again. That's it. You don't have to worry about the fist coming out or getting lost or anything like that. You just keep it in the same forearm that it came from. And now to attach this peg goes into the peg hole in there, and then this tab goes into the top of the forearm there. So you just want to angle that in and peg it, and then this comes down and pegs into forearm. Why are you trying to make me look bad in front of company? There we go. So that pegs in, just keep that down, and now Shockwave, or Chaos, has his giant off arm. You do also have the option of pulling off this little piece here, which just there's a little peg underneath there that this pegs into. And if you wanted to do this on either or arm, you could pull off the fist and peg this in place here. And instead of the giant cannon, you can give him a more kind of typical tinier Shockwave blaster hand. So you could have Shockwave dual wielding, you could have him with just the tiny one. You do have options. I prefer to go with the giant gun on the one arm. I wish I could put it on this arm, but like I said, that tab just does not stay in place. But if you wanted to, you could store this on his back and just use this. So just untab this and pull it off. And then around the back here, there is, moving these out of the way, there is this slot back here, and then a couple of different tabs on the back of the gun here. So you could potentially, if you wanted to kind of spread these out, you could peg this in here to store it up like that. Or if you wanted to keep these in, you can take the tab on the top of the gun here, and that can tab in there. And that actually goes around the wings, so you don't have to worry about moving the wings out, but it now gives them all of this happen in the back. I mean, I think I honestly prefer the bigger one, but I do like this look, but I don't like having all of this hanging off his back. And under normal circumstances, I would just be like, okay, that's fine. I'll take all of this and keep it in the box. But this is necessary for the vehicle mode. You can't not have this if you want to transform him back into his vehicle mode. So you kind of have to either put it on an arm or attach it to his back. Those are your only options. It's a little bit disappointing, but oh well. Now the big gun is a big gun. It's got that kind of that three-pronged look from the game. I forget what kind of gun this was, but this was a gun in the game from what I can remember. Again, though, I wish they had done something behind the translucent purple plastic here, because that does look really dull when it's sitting inside the purple, the opaque purple plastic. But, you know, there's some nice detailing, which we did see in the vehicle mode with these metallic purple details painted in the stripes there, and there's some metallic purple in there. And of course, around these frills here, which can also, these can still open up in the gun mode if you want them to, and both layers can open. So that's a thing you can do. You can give Shockwave a Bloomin' Onion arm. And if you wanted to, also, you could detach this, and it just pegs into the three holes there, and you could also detach this if you want. So you could have like a completely different looking weapon. You do have options with this guy, which is cool. I appreciate options. I just wish that this wasn't like this big parts forming thing that you needed for the vehicle mode. With all that stuff out of the way, let's talk about Shockwave proper. And I really like this look for Shockwave, and I think that Chaos does a really good job of capturing Shockwave's Fall of Cybertron look without looking as thin and weedy as the Generations figure. Again, it's a much more expensive figure, so that stands to reason, but I like what they did here. Because of the nature of the transformation, the nature of the alt mode, there's not a ton of new detail that's revealed here. Like, you get the head and the shoulders, but like a lot of what you saw with the forearms, like these bits here were actually visible in the vehicle mode. These panels on the sides of the legs were visible. The feet were actually the front of the alt mode, basically. These thruster bits back here were all visible. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's not necessarily new, but I appreciate how it all comes together. I do think there's some really nifty stuff going on here. It's really just the issue that I have with those panel transformations on the calves that I wish they had done something a little bit less scary about. But anyway, Shockwave has that, like the vehicle, the darker purple with the lighter metallic purple highlights, and then the kind of darker gunmetal in places, and then also that translucent purple. And it's a really nice color scheme. I also like how they bring in more of that gunmetal in other places now. Like, it was visible in the vehicle mode, but now you've got like the feet, the knees, the inner thighs, the waist, the fists, part of the forearms, part of the elbows, the shoulders, the neck, a little bit of detailing around the collar there. There's also some nice detailing, like actual molded detailing here. And again, a lot of this is stuff we saw in the vehicle mode, but then in the inner thighs, there's some nice molding and some more of that metallic purple, even like a little ring around the knee joint, which is cool. More metallic purple in there, and I really like this kind of layered look in the abdomen with the gunmetal and the metallic purple on top of the darker purple. It's, from what I understand, from what I remember, pretty darn accurate to the source material, so that is cool. As I said, this is not how Chaos's head looks out of the box, but I do really like it with that dark void and yellow dot. I just think that looks better. I know it's not accurate, but it looks better. But the head is really nicely detailed. There's some nice molding all over the place, including the darker gray ear pieces. Around back, you actually have some of that metallic purple. It's really nicely detailed, and these are some tiny details that they painted there. That neck plate also has some really nice wiring detail too. So yeah, they definitely did a good job with the detailing and the colors on this guy. Aside from the face being a bit not, but still, I do think he's cool looking. Now, you may notice that his legs are angled a bit funny. That's because the way that the feet sit, they can't actually line up straight with this. Like, you feel like it should be like this, but the foot just does not go up that far. Like, if you want to angle it straight like that, then the foot's going to be pointed down. You can move the toe up, but then he doesn't have any heel. So basically what you have to do is angle the section of the leg below the knee forward, and it gives him a little bit of a chicken leg look. I know that that's not necessarily a look that people like. I'm neither here nor there on the chicken leg look. It doesn't really bother me, but you do need to have that leg kind of angled forward if you want to have his feet completely on the ground. That said, the pseudo chicken leg look, from what I understand and from what I saw on TFW, is actually accurate to the game. He did actually have his legs angled forward like that, so it's accurate. As far as articulation goes, we've seen what the head can do. It can rotate around and look up and down. You can push the neck down if you don't want the neck to be sticking up that far. But if you want that expressiveness of being able to look way up or way down, then you got that. The wings, weirdly, I don't know what it is, but the one wing on this side just doesn't seem to want to sit quite the same as the one on this side. So it kind of is a little uneven if you want to make it look even. It's weird. But you can adjust the wings to have them come out a bit or point in a bit. These panels back here, you've got two separate places where they move. Move on the end here and move on the gray bit there. The arms, as you've seen, can go all the way around. They can go in and out. The shoulder pad can move independently. You've got a bicep swivel. You also have butterfly motion, which is pretty darn cool. And that's, I don't think that's necessary for the transformation either. I think they just put that in because you get a elbow that actually does have two joints in it. The first joint goes to about there. The lower joint goes to about there. So if you combine the two, you can get, yeah, you're basically only getting a little over 90 degrees if you combine the two. Another thing to note is, it's hard to see, but there's this this circular disc section back here that kind of stays lined up with that joint. If you move the lower joint, then it gets misaligned and it doesn't look quite right. So I think you're meant to use that upper joint, but you can use both. As for the hand, when he has one, you get some wiggle like that for the transformation, and because it's a peg, you can rotate, and then you can open the fingers, but they're pretty stiff. This hand isn't so bad. The other hand is very, very stiff, but it is openable, and I feel like just doing it a bunch will loosen it up over time. All of the fingers are one big connected thing on two separate hinges, so you can hinge it out there and hinge it out there, and that's pretty much as far as it extends. No pointing for Shockwave. With these up and out of the way, we can talk about the waist, and the waist does a lot. There is that tilt, as we saw, but the problem is when that big gun is attached, it does not want to stay on the side that does not have the gun on it. It'll stay tilted that way, but if I tilt it this way, it just falls back into place. So that kind of stinks. You also get the waist swivel that we saw for the transformation, and in addition to that, there's actually an ab crunch that you can unclip from the back here, and that gets you a pretty decent ab crunch. It's not going to hold too much like that, but I feel like it does hold position enough when you're trying to, yeah. It does actually hold position at least, so you can click that forward a bit if you want to give them a bit of an ab crunch. For the hips, they can rotate all the way up and pretty much, yeah, all the way back. Outward motion is a little bit restricted because of these, I guess, armored bits that are going up there. It's just like that's as high up as it's going to go. You also get a thigh rotation, which is blocked again because of the construction of the thigh, but I think it's enough of a rotation to get the job done. I think that's plenty. The knees are interesting because you've got two joints, one here and one here, and so you can mess around with them to straighten the leg out. You can have them kind of angled like that. You can bend the one joint, you can bend the second joint. basically, you've got a pretty decent knee if you want to bend it all the way. But again, I feel like ideally you kind of want to angle it a little bit odd just to make sure that his calves are pointed in the right direction so that he balances properly. And the feet can go all the way down. You can move this bit kind of independently. The back section can tilt side to side. The front section can also tilt side to side. And if you wanted to, you could point the toe down or point the toe up a bit. Again, though, if you want to keep them stable, you kind of want to keep this all aligned. It's definitely a bit of a strange design, but it's accurate to the source material, right? In the end, that's all that matters. I'm joking, but in some cases that does seem to be all that matters. But yeah, I do think Caius is very cool. He's just a little bit nuanced, let's say. He's nicely articulated. He looks really cool, and I especially like having the black and yellow face now. That really helps make me love this figure more. But there's just little nitpicky things that I feel like would have been nice for them to adjust a little bit, maybe spend a little more time thinking about. But that's enough rambling about that. We still gotta go over size comparisons, right? Here is Caius with the standard deluxe squad, and you know, he's pretty big. I mean, the vehicle mode was also pretty big. It was slim, but there was still obviously a lot there. I do think it's kind of funny how his vehicle mode is basically this, only stretched out vertically and then laid horizontally, but it works. You know, I wasn't originally going to do this, but what the heck. Let's bring in some more Planet X stuff. So here is Caius with Fatum or Fatum or something. I don't know how you pronounce this one, but this is Planet X's version of Fall of Cybertron Thundercracker. I do intend to do a video on this guy eventually. It's not part of my lineup for right now, but I do want to get to him eventually. Here he is with Planet X's Charon, their Nemesis Prime Colors version of Fall of Cybertron Optimus Prime. And here's the Planet X comparison that is probably the only one that really matters. That is Caius with Vulcan. And from what I remember from the game, this is absolutely not to scale. This doesn't really bother me, it's just not accurate to the game. And here's Caius with the Duck Tank. Okay, I don't know how that ended up taking an hour, but that is it for Planet X's Caius. I do really like this figure. It does some things that I'm kind of like, about. In particular, the legs I think are kind of the biggest sticking point for me, both in terms of having to angle them in a kind of weird, unnatural way, which doesn't really mean anything considering these are alien robots, but you know what I mean. And also that transformation. Just, I really wish they had done something else to make it easier to get that hinge past the hip. That first time I transformed this guy, though, woof, that was terrifying. I've got my nitpicks, as I've gone over many times, but I do really like Caius. As of now, this is the only Shockwave I have anymore, because I've sold all my other Shockwaves, so yeah. I'm glad to at least have a version of this really disturbing mono-eyed monster on my shelf. But that is enough about what I think. What do you all think of Planet X's Caius, or Fall of Cybertron Shockwave's design in general? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. If you like any of the videos that I do and you feel like supporting the channel, there is a Patreon, which you can find the link for in the description or at the end of the video on the title card. There's only a single $1 tier available. Joining would support the channel and also get you early access to new videos before anyone else who's not a patron anyway. And also will get you access to some behind the scenes stuff if that kind of stuff interests you. Either way, thank you for watching, and remember, art is more than meets the eye.